Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is yet another review of another really horrible installment in the Halloween franchise. A series that, to me personally, has been incredibly disappointing, and this particular entry is no exception. That is the 2007 remake of Halloween, directed by Rob Zombie. Now, I personally have never been a fan of this film. I pretty much despised this movie the first time I saw it. I thought it was one of the worst remakes out there, and I still feel it's one of the worst horror remakes. I don't think it's the worst ever, but it's definitely in the top 10 at the very least. It is the epitome of unnecessary and exaggerated horror. I think Rob Zombie was the wrong fit for a reimagining of this franchise from the very beginning. His white trash wheelhouse and the attempt to inject that white trash into the Halloween franchise is like shoving a square peg into a round asshole. It's not a good fit. It's painful, and it's pretty much a shitty experience for everybody. So, Rob Zombie wrote and directed this movie. Rob Zombie still at this point thought that he was a dual threat filmmaker, and it's just painfully evident that that's not the case. As a director, he's adequate, he's above average, he can set up his shots fairly well enough. I think he has a good idea of what kind of energy and life to bring into his films. When he gets the right cinematographer, he tends to get some decent shots when it comes to the way the camera or the film breathes, or the way that the film creates a certain mood and atmosphere. This film has a gritty, grimy look to it, and I think it definitely does help the movie in terms of providing it some semblance of atmosphere or mood. But other than just, the bare minimum aesthetics, it's not particularly that great of a film when it comes to its direction either. But Rob Zombie's direction in this is not the kind of effort where it's just awful and it's hard to look at. It's fine enough. It's decent, like most of his films. It's his writing that is woefully substandard and spectacularly shitty. He is a stupendously bad screenwriter. There have been people who have said that he is the George Lucas of horror. And I think that's a great way to put it, because just like George Lucas, Rob Zombie is someone who is a much better director than they are a writer. And just like George Lucas, he sucks at writing likable and engaging characters. He sucks at writing dialogue, and he sucks at writing, really captivating and compelling stories. And also, just like George Lucas, Zombie is a good idea guy. He's someone who can really come up with some genuinely intriguing concepts and ideas, but never really has the talent to fully flesh them out, to really make them live up to their full potential. And that's why I feel Rob Zombie is like the worst guy you can ask to remake such an iconic, memorable, and beloved film like John Carpenter's Halloween. Because he will more than likely just go the lazy route, which is exactly what he did, because he's not very talented when it comes to his screenwriting. So all he did is just inject a bunch of white trash into the franchise, which ultimately buried it even further into the landfill than it already was at this point in time, and destroyed whatever mystique the franchise had left. His idea of a bold new reimagining of Halloween is the same shit you've seen done in a million other movies when it comes to a killer. I find it really hilarious that in interviews he says things like, like this in defense of his reimagining of Halloween. He says his intention to reinvent Michael Myers was because he felt the character, along with Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, and Pinhead, had become more familiar with audiences, and as a result, less scary. So he felt that the idea of delving deeper into Michael's backstory would add new life to the character. He would also explain how Michael's mask would be given its own story to provide an explanation why he wears it, instead of having the character simply steal a random mask from a hardware store in the original film. Zombie explained that he wanted Michael to be true to what a psychopath really is, and yada yada yada. But here's the problem. By taking that approach to make Michael Myers less familiar by providing him a serial killer backstory, he makes him even more familiar. Because you take away the unknown. What's less familiar than the unknown? It's just absolutely asinine. It's stupid. There's no reason to provide such a in-depth and unnecessary backstory to Michael Myers, because it doesn't really make the character any stronger. It doesn't make the character any more interesting. It doesn't make his killing spree when young Michael Myers kills his sister any more scary. It actually makes it less scary, especially the way that Rob Zombie writes it and how it's approached in this film. I mean, you have young Michael Myers wearing a Michael Myers mask that's 3 sizes too big for his head, so he looks like a fucking bobblehead walking around. It's laughable. Oh, and his explanation for the Michael Myers mask, it was Judith's boyfriend's fuck mask. Yeah, that's the explanation. Oh, yeah, well, Michael liked to wear masks because he wanted to hide his face and so on and so forth, but that's not the kind of mask that he was wearing initially. He was making his own masks in prison, and he was just wearing a clown mask, just like young Michael Myers did in the 1978 film. But he tries to provide an explanation for why he decided to choose the Michael Myers mask. He only chose it because it was there, and it was only there because it was Judith's boyfriend's fuck mask. Great. Fucking great. Fucking wonderful. So, yeah, Rob Zombie's bold new vision of Halloween isn't very bold and isn't very new. And a lot of the choices here are just completely unnecessary and exaggerated. From like the first 5 minutes, you have this pretentious quote that starts the movie, and then right off the bat, you get a glimpse into Michael's white trash family, and it's excruciatingly agonizing to sit through, and it's not disturbing or unsettling in the way I think he intended it to be. It's unbelievably laughable and puerile. So I guess it's trying to be a setup for why Michael Myers would snap, because his family life is so shitty and so damaging. But when you got William Forsythe saying he's gonna come over there and skull fuck the shit out of somebody, or talking about snorkeling and you know, coming all over somebody's tits, and essentially acts like a baby, you know, going, cry, wah, wah, all that little fucker does is cry and shit, cry and shit. You're just like, this is not providing the intent that I think you want, Rob. This isn't unsettling. This is Jerry Springer show levels of ridiculousness. It's just not providing anything that's real or genuine. It feels so unnecessary and so exaggerated. It continues with young Michael Myers putting his fingers in his ears and going, "I'm not listening!" And it's just something that is incredibly ear-grating. And Rob, with his script, tries to make Michael a sympathetic character. Like he's just the result of a damaged, broken home. And you're like, this kid's a little shit. He is also already a psychopath. He's torturing and killing animals. He's throwing a fit because his sister didn't want to take him trick-or-treating. Kid, you're old enough. Like, even his sister says that. You're old enough to go trick-or-treating by yourself. He is at this point. What's his fucking problem? Also, yes, his family life is shitty, but that's no excuse to go on a killing spree and kill everybody. So, you even have scenes that lay it on so thick, it's absurd. Michael's sitting there on the porch and he's upset after he went trick-or-treating, and they play Love Hurts in the background. Love hurts. Love bleeds. You're just like, come on. Could you be any more obvious in terms of the emotion you're trying to convey here? And it's trying to make you sympathetic towards this little shit who's been killing cats and just being a little fucking psychopath. And I'm just like, I don't care. He could get fucking hit by Ben Tramer in a car for all I give a shit, and he would explode. We wouldn't have a movie. I'd be fine with that. Then I don't have to fucking watch this shitty imagining of Halloween anymore. But yeah, he's upset, and so then he goes on his killing spree. He kills Judith's boyfriend with a baseball bat just because he was fucking his sister. He kills his sister. He tapes up his asshole stepfather, figure in some way, and then cuts his throat. All while he's wearing the Michael Myers mask, which is fucking silly as all hell. And so he goes on this killing spree. Oh, of course, prior to that, he went and killed the bully who was talking shit about his mom, talking about how he's gonna, suck on his mom's titties. And just everybody in this movie is equally as obnoxious and exaggerated when it comes to their dialogue and how they behave. Even the kids are acting like, Jerry Springer guests. And I know I'm not the first one to bring that up, but it's the perfect analogy to make for this movie. And so yeah, Michael kills his sister's boyfriend, and kills the asshole live-in boyfriend of his mom, and then he gets sent to an institution, and then he grows up to be like a 7-foot-tall motherfucker for some reason, and this kid was like this little fucking runt, Dennis the Menace looking motherfucker, and now he's like this giant, huge wrestling behemoth. Yeah, I don't buy that at all. But Rob Zombie is so bad when it comes to his writing. He even makes this big 7-foot-tall Michael Myers into a total joke and a pathetic ogre, because prior to that, he had scenes of young Michael Myers wearing that mask, going around looking like a stupid-looking bobblehead. It was such a piss-poor decision, because after I saw those scenes with 8-year-old Michael Myers or 10-year-old Michael Myers, who's a little fucking runt wearing a mask that's way too big for his head, when he put it back on and he's this big, giant, tall guy, I'm still thinking about little runt Michael Myers. There's a reason why you don't see scenes with little kids wearing fucking giant masks in attempts to try to make them scary or somewhat intimidating or freaky, because it's just not believable in any way, shape, or form. The only time it might have worked is in Season of the Witch, but it only worked not because they were wearing masks, it's because what was going on inside the masks, and how the kids' heads started to like melt and shit because they were wearing the masks, not because it was just a kid wearing a mask. Just another instance of over-exaggerating things and being totally unnecessary. So, of course, prior to that, you had all these scenes where they're once again trying to make you sympathetic towards Michael Myers and his plight, and Loomis and him trying to get through to him, and so on and so forth. These scenes are well acted, at least from Malcolm McDowell, who was one of the very few bright spots out of this entire movie. And none of it really adds up to anything worthwhile because it's so boring. And then you get the last hour of the movie, which is just John Carpenter's Halloween with a few tweaks here and there. Laurie goes to the Myers house to drop off a key. I think it was Bob. He gets killed the same way that he did in the 1978 film. He just winds up getting stabbed on the wall next to the stairway instead of stabbed on the wall in the kitchen. Michael even gets shot 6 times by Loomis in the end. There's the same line of dialogue. Was that the boogeyman? Matter of fact, it was. Like the same fucking shit. It's almost a beat for beat remake of the 1978 film in the most lazy way possible. I will give Rob Zombie this, at least in the first 30 minutes. He was trying to do something different that John Carpenter didn't already do and didn't already excel at. But in the last hour of this story and this script, it's just reheated leftovers from the 1978 film. So yeah, the script sucks. It really does. The way that he writes these characters is so annoying. None of these characters are likable in the slightest. The tendencies of certain characters, like PJ Soul's character in the original, are just exaggerated. I was like, Linda, right? Linda is like just a straight up slut. So is her friend. Trying to remember what the name of these characters were. Annie Brackett. Although it was nice to see Danielle Harris again, but character really didn't really have a whole lot to do and wasn't really that good and wasn't that well written. Laurie Strode in this is a horny slut who's just who gets on your nerves immediately the first time you see her in the film. And there's no one to root for. I mean, Malcolm McDowell is like the only character. Loomis is the only character that I kind of give a shit about. And also Sheriff Brackett. But the only reason why I care about Sheriff Brackett is because it's portrayed, the character is portrayed by Brad Dourif. And that's another thing that's completely, totally wasted about this film. Wasted with this film is the cast. You got a cast of really talented genre actors here. You got Richard Lynch, who plays the principal of the high school, who is only there for a few scenes to break up a fight between young Michael Myers and these bullies, and then get told to fuck off by the little shit that is Michael Myers. And that's it. What a waste of a really talented actor in Richard Lynch. You have Sid Haig, who plays the groundskeeper at the graveyard, who is telling Loomis about the headstone that was stolen. And just a very brief scene. He's only in it for like 2 minutes. And then you have like Ken Foree. He plays this truck driver who's taking a shit. And he winds up getting killed by Michael Myers, who then steals his outfit. Because Rob Zombie was so adamant about explaining things like that. There's an interview where he's talking about how John Carpenter, did a lot of dumb things. Like, how did he get that outfit? And how did Michael Myers learn how to drive? I'm not going to do that in my movie. It's like, dude, get off your fucking high horse. You're not even in the same stratosphere as John Carpenter. And apparently he reached out to John to try to say, hey, I'm doing this. I want to get your blessing, blah, blah, blah. But over the years, I mean, John saw the film. He didn't like it. He didn't like how he destroyed the mystique of Michael Myers. Made it so the unknown was now known. And he didn't like other things about it. And I think John is right on the money. Providing the serial killer explanation for Michael Myers, instead of it just being some mysterious random act of violence that has no explanation for it, makes it really no longer as special or unique. It makes Michael Myers and his origin more cookie cutter than it was previously. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, just the characters, they suck. The story, it sucks. There's really not a whole lot of new, innovative, or interesting things that are brought into the fold when it comes to this retelling of Halloween, except just mounds of white trash. And yeah, waste of a cast. Bill Moseley, he plays one of the one of the people who works at the prison, if I remember correctly. You have Danny Trejo, who plays a role that was very different for him. He played a guy who worked at the prison, and he was like a prison guard, and he wasn't a bad guy. He was actually a really nice guy. So I would say he was like the only character that when he died, I actually kind of felt a little bit of emotion when it comes to his death, because he, despite the fact that Michael Myers is a psychopathic killer, he still showed some compassion for him after all of these years. And that moment where he's like, Mikey, no, you kind of were like, hey, you kind of felt a little bit. You felt something, which is better than the nothing that I felt when it comes to any of the other death scenes in the film. You have Sheri Moon Zombie, who once again is in the movie. She plays Michael's mother. I will say this. This is arguably her best performance. That's still not saying much, but I will give her this. That character had some heart to her, so I did feel some emotion for her too when she finally decided to kill herself. That actually was a little emotional when it comes to how it came across. So I want to give Zombie, the writer and director, as well as his wife, credit for that. I thought her acting in that whole scene was actually quite good. So yeah, I mean, pretty solid cast. I think casting Scout Taylor Compton was a really big misstep on Rob Zombie's part, because I don't think she was ready for prime time. She came across as more whiny than anything. I didn't buy her when she was being more tough and trying to fend off Michael Myers. Um, so yeah, I thought that was a really bad bit of casting there, to have Scout Taylor Compton play Laurie Strode. And I just didn't really care for anybody. Most of the characters are just unlikable, and you didn't really give a shit whether they lived or died. And that really made the film very boring when it comes to its pacing, because it just felt like it was just shambling around, going through the motions, or just waiting for something to happen, and waiting to see if Rob Zombie's going to do something with the franchise, at least with some kills, at least with something like that that would perk up the audience or perk you up. And it never really happens. Throughout this film, Rob Zombie takes the approach that Michael Myers does during one of the climactic sequences, where Laurie Strode is hiding in the crawl space or the attic of the Myers house. She's trying to, hide from Michael. And he takes this giant 2x4. Michael grabs this 2x4, and he starts bashing through the ceiling repeatedly in a really overlong and unnecessary sequence. And that was the exact approach that Rob Zombie made with this film. There's a lot of just blindly hitting the wall, just blindly just smashing shit, hoping that something good is going to fall out and something worthwhile is going to result out of this overlong, unnecessary stint of just bashing randomly through the wall, hoping you'll break through and you'll have a breakout moment. There's no subtlety. It's just bashing shit. And that really gets old after a while. It really does. I know it's one of those films that it does have its fans, and to each their own. I'm definitely not one of them. I checked out the theatrical cut because I wanted to see if that was any better than the director's cut. And I will say this, I'll admit it. The theatrical cut of Halloween, it is a little bit better paced. There are certain sequences that are a little more effective as a result in terms of how they're edited and how they're put together. And the fact that it cuts out the rape sequence is a plus. But it still sucks. It's still as hollow as a jack-o'-lantern at the end of the day. There's nothing there but air. So, it also features a score by Tyler Bates. The score isn't terrible. I do appreciate the fact that it manages to bring back some of the more memorable and iconic notes of Carpenter's score. I do like that approach. I think that's the right approach to take with this remake. I felt that a lot of the other Halloween films prior to this really strayed a little too far away from Carpenter's score. So that was nice. The cinematography by Phil Parmet, it's not jaw-dropping, but it's decent enough. He seemed to have a good amount of chemistry with Rob Zombie. The editing by Glenn Garland, there are some shots where I think it makes Michael appear as if he's got like teleportation powers, which is a little distracting. But other than moments like that, it's got some decent editing as well. It's not a really bad film from a technical standpoint. There are some moments where the score kind of has all of the subtlety of the 2x4 through the roof, with, you know, some sequences that are really trying to grab you with the music or so on and so forth, but it isn't really that effective. It's just one of those films that I think it probably would have been better if you didn't really... First off, if you didn't explain Michael Myers and have all these scenes with Michael Myers, this little shit who you wanted to kick into a pit of spikes, and this whole, oh my god, he had such a broken childhood, like, none of that bullshit. Continue to leave why he did what he did up to the audience and their imagination. Give Malcolm McDowell's character more screen time, as well as Brad Dourif's character and Sheriff Brackett. Recast Laurie Strode. Take out the white trash stuff. It doesn't have any place in this franchise or in this particular film, except just random amounts of white trash that stink up the entire place, and honestly prevent the film from really reaching whatever heights it might be trying to reach in the first place. It just makes everything so trashy. And I would recast Michael Myers as well. Just because you got this big, tall, giant Michael Myers, that doesn't mean it's a more intimidating presence. To me, it's the obvious route to take, and that makes it even less unique when it comes to a slasher film. I like the fact that Michael Myers was of normal height. That's what made him stand out from Jason Voorhees or some of these other serial killers. When he's now like 7 feet tall, it also takes away his ability to effectively hide in the shadows. Like, there's a sequence in this film where he's standing behind these kids who were sitting on the couch watching TV. And you're like, first off, how the fuck did he get in there without anybody noticing or hearing anything? And how do these kids not feel this hulking presence behind them? I mean, he's 7 foot tall. He's like a bull in a fucking china shop. There's no way that this guy is going to be a ninja or be shadowy or, have any legitimate skills when it comes to being stealthy. He's too fucking big. He's a fucking ogre. And the ending, if it actually led to anything, like he actually did get shot in the head and he was dead, I'd be like, hey, congratulations, you actually decided to have the balls to actually kill Michael Myers. Nope. Because there's still Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 that essentially retcons all of that. And that whole ending, the way it's written, is just unnecessary and more exaggeration. The sequences just drag on and on and on, and you're just waiting for the movie to end, and you're waiting for Michael Myers to either get Laurie Strode and kill her, because at this point you don't give a fuck anymore. You just want the film to put itself out of its own misery, and then it still doesn't end. Like, oh, okay, Loomis shot Michael Myers 6 times. It was the boogeyman. Okay, all right, we're done. No, jump scare. Michael Myers crushes Loomis's head and then continues to go after Laurie. And then she shoots him in the head and screams, and that's the end of the movie. And then you're like, good God, that was exhausting. It really is. It's an exhausting film to watch because of how unnecessary and exaggerated it is. I know I've repeated that so many times, and some people might think that's unnecessary. But I think it bears repeating because that is the best way to sum up this film and why it's so flawed and why it's so bad. It's just multiple bouts and multiple sequences and multiple just absolute instances of unnecessary over-exaggeration when it comes to the dialogue, when it comes to the characters, when it comes to the film's story. It needed to take a step back. It needed to be a little more subtle in its approach. And I think if it did that, it ultimately might have been a better movie. I don't think it would have been a great film, but if it just did not go all in all the time, I think that it might have been more tolerable. It would have been less exhausting to sit through. Because you can only take so much intensity before you're just sick of it. And if you just overdo the intensity, it loses its impact. The more times that you do it, the more times that you push things to their limits when it comes to how intense things are throughout the film. So, yeah, I know this isn't like a raging rant, but trust me, I don't like this film. I really do not like this film at all. But it's the kind of bad movie that at the end of the day, once you get past the really obnoxious and irritating like first 5 minutes, it's just pretty forgettable and lackluster. It's that kind of bad. And the Halloween franchise at this point was already forgettable and lackluster in terms of a lot of its sequels. So it didn't need another forgettable and lackluster installment in the series. But if I were forced to talk about things that were good about it, like I said, Zombie's direction is alright. And Malcolm McDowell really did a great job. I don't think he's anywhere near close to the same level as Donald Pleasance was, but he still really cared about this role, gave it his all, and he was genuinely a really bright spot when it comes to this film, which is just full of so many dark moments and parts that just make you feel the the darkness inside of you rise up as a bile that makes you want to vomit because it's just so unpleasant and so uncomfortable to watch. I got really nothing else to say about this film. I've talked about it longer than I probably thought I was going to. But thanks for watching my review of Rob Zombie's Halloween. And as always, I'll see you later. See ya.